architecture more particularly. So I began to do, or actually I worked quite conscientiously in a kind of metamorphic kind of genre, developing very simple themes like trees or mountains, that which all told were not simplistic, because they demanded pretty much all of my attention. And so there's a lot of hubris that I have gone through in my painting career. And then I began probably in the early 90s to pursue abstract work from a color perspective, simple shapes against a muted background. And that certainly inspired and facilitated my work. I began to sell work through the art rental department at Moss Street in the late 90s, around 1996. And that's always a boom when you get some vindication. Then I went through a landscape period from, say, probably the 2000s. I started focusing on Rothko, which is kind of luminous cubes, and developing them into a kind of phenomenological landscape, such as exemplified in this one on the far right. It's modified, but I was speaking to Rothko when I was painting such things, and I should hasten to add that the plant motif has been probably most consistent throughout my career. What it really embodies is the principle of growth and decay. I'm not copying, I'm not seeing something outside that looks sweet and pleasant, but I'm focusing on the generation that color provides. The gravitation and the pull of levity that this, I would say, complementary of color gives, be it red, yellow, or blue. You can juxtapose them in various different positions in your world, which is the surface of the painting. Anyway, the plant, it embodies those interesting principles. We take part in them every day, unconsciously, but they're reflected in the world of nature also. So, a bit more about the plant. The plant derives from Goethe's notion. He was an amateur botanist, and he postulated to himself, he said, somewhere there must be an archetypal plant. And he studied plants in different locations and landscapes, in altitudes and lower things. And he said there's a sameness that implies that these plants are all relative, whatever their makeup. So, interestingly, at a conference for biodynamic farming in Germany in 1924, Diamond produced the first ever replication of archetypal plant. It was a huge watercolor, 30 by 40 inches, and he used it as a poster for a eurythmy performance.
Who was it?
For a eurythmy performance.
No, who did this?
This is Rudolf Steiner.
Oh, okay.
And this was at an agricultural conference.
Right.
And he must have been inspired and felt that it was in tune. Mm-hmm. Anyhow, these remained in his archive, and my teacher got hold of a sample of it, and began to study it. And himself, by modifying color, it's very simple color chord, if you will, of greens and indigos and oranges and pinks. But anyway, he took the positioning of that theme and he began to condense some of the color. And he developed that into many series of metamorphoses by, for example, taking black to green, not obliterating the green, but enough to give it weight, or any other color, etc. So, it was from that inception, that seed, that most of my studies in plants have evolved. These are not in watercolor, the chosen medium that Steiner would have used, but acrylic does kind of give me some lead in to the theme itself. I'd like to have the leisure and expense to pursue them in watercolor, but that's not the case at this moment. I should say also a word on the title of my exhibition, which is Points West. I began my studies in Central Europe. I am one of a coterie, I don't know how many, most of them are in the eastern states. There's a school there. But I think that Points West refers for me that I am speaking through my painting to the rest of the hemisphere. I'm not limiting myself to Victoria in that respect. And so we can be grateful for internet for that respect, I suppose. Now I'm certainly open to questions, but I brought with you quotes that have inspired me throughout my career, and if you'd like me to share them with you, I would be happy to.
Absolutely.
And I think you'll probably get the gist of this, that this didn't develop out of thin air, well, maybe so, but out of nowhere anyway. Anyway, this is what Schiller writes to his friend Goethe in the beginning of the 1800s. Anyway, it's very short. He writes to Goethe, "Dost thou seek the highest, the greatest? The plant can show it thee. What the plant is unconsciously, be thou intentionally." Schiller. So, he had collaboration with his, innovative botanist studies. It's quite interesting. Anyway, here's what Rudolf Steiner, a quote from Steiner himself. And he says, "When we experience the life of color, we step out of our own skins and take part in cosmic life." This applies very much to the perceptions of the soul, of our psychic perceptions. And here is a part of a letter, which is quite a remarkable document, which Goethe's contemporary, Philipp Otto Runge, who was also a contemporary of Caspar David Friedrich, and he writes to Goethe on in July 1806. Once one has become absorbed in it, the relationship of light to transparent color is of infinite delight. And the igniting of the colors, the blending of them, one into the other, their rebirth, their vanishing, is like breath being drawn at great pauses, from eternity to eternity, from the highest light down to the lonely, eternal silence. Anyway, as you know, Goethe, he placed great store on colors. He also made a specific study of the spectrum. And he came out with a very provocative declaration when he declared that colors were the result of the deeds and sufferings of light. These little epigrams I find quite, I've lived with them for a while, and they're enigmatic. You can't really kind of codify them in a fixed bracket. Anyway, and here's what my own teacher writes. Finally, I'll let you free after this. He writes, color experience must become stronger than the mental image and must be able to supersede the latter. Then it leads us into the realm of living, moving color, out of which the original motives in process of becoming renew themselves, out of which the original motives are in process of becoming renewed. Okay. That is about all I want to kind of foist upon you. But I'd be happy to try and answer any kind of queries you might have.
Can I make a remark?
Sure.
From what you're saying, that what I feel is something that I haven't really experienced before, and that is the coming together of pigment color and light color, because we're looking at computers, we're looking at color through light in a lot of ways, and that is one way of experiencing it. Another way is with pigment. And when I experience your paintings, it feels like I've got them both, because the light is not directional to me. It is both in and out of the objects and the patterns on the image. It's kind of both.
Well, yeah, I can't avoid the pigment.
No,
short,
but you've made
I
the pigment do
definitely,
something.
one of my guiding principles in color practice is to try to produce something that is weightless. I think that's fairly common with many artists. So that, even though you have a kind of, you have a resonance, a resonant surface that might imply weight. It is always, I always strive to counterbalance that with something that is not far-flung but speaks to it in a complementary way.
Yeah, so there can be light, meaning whatever that stuff is out there that shines, or light and weight. I mean, that in a way you're talking about that as well, the weight of substance and the lightness of non-substantial. That's interesting.
But isn't it also a technique? Because I've got a friend who follows this kind of way and teaches it. What I've seen in her work is that you build layer on layer on layer of really thin color, and that's how you build up your color, but it also means that you get that kind of translucency. Like in that one, it's very obvious.
Yeah.
There's
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of layers in there. Well, in a
Yeah,
lot
that
of paintings.
principle very much adheres to me, but you know, watercolor definitely has its own character. You cannot, you know, we'd be relatively hard pressed to produce something like this.
Well, she works on
Richness.
that.
But you can get some very interesting effects with watercolor for sure. I sometimes paraphrase my own work as the art of standing. You're waiting for, you know, the next spot to paint, or you know, the next place that you can, you know, it's really a dialogue you're trying to pursue. That otherwise, you know, they just become arbitrary, abstract images. You know, I want to instill some sense of drama and development. Simple though many of my motives are. And, I should add that in my practice I include underpainting considerably. This sets the tone and the mood of a work. Often I will override with a motive of very rich red texture, you know, and you will see how to paraphrase, how, for example, a blue will carry a red undertone. And that is exemplified in this one, a small one, this two-pronged vase there, that, you know, you have indications that it was painted on a warm red background. And I allowed certain elements of the red to peek through. But what you're really kind of addressing there is what's necessary in the blue to kind of stand its ground on the powerful red, against the powerful red. So there's a lot of tricks and antics and balancing feats that I have to go through, and this, of course, is done through mixing of color. Yes.
Dennis, what's the significance of the hanging
The chime.
chimes? Yeah, what's that?
Well, you know, I began doing those in the late 90s, and that's the genesis of it, and I entitled them Joys and Virtues. You know, you have your different qualities that a hanging vessel will give you, and I found that it lent itself rather well to just abstract presentation. But so it evolved, and here you have kind of symbols that adhere to a more classic vein. You know, you've got the wind chime, and they're inroads. They're ways of relating to color through symbol. And the real kind of challenge of it was to produce it in such a way that it's not just stuck there, but it is somehow suspended and carries the potential of possibly wavering in the wind. Yes,
Actually, this is just a comment, but
I don't mind.
yeah, no, it's just because, you know, it's like, for me, the chimes actually add an aural aspect to it in the way that musicians often over history have said that certain notes have a color. If you talk to a classical musician,
Oh,
they
yeah.
will, so I'm talking about aural, right? And so when you have the chimes, it's just something that is, to me, intrinsic. So dealing with the geometric and dealing with space and dealing with light and space and then adding the chime to it, to me, adds another dimension. That's just, you know what I mean? Just interesting.
Oh, indeed it is. You have a number of kind of inclined artists who adhere to that, are aware of that principle.
Mm-hmm.
I think they term it synesthesia.
Exactly.
You're in color.
I think in this one, you and I talked about that, and I just was saying how, to me, it feels like a bit of whimsy or wit is added to this very sort of there subject matter. Then it's kind of reflective that it's quite a lighter aspect, and quite a different tone.
Yeah. I'm always after something when I begin a painting. I want to find out how a color behaves juxtaposed against another one. And principally, what I was after here was kind of finding the weightedness of amber.
Right.
And I could only do that indirectly.
How do you come about with your image and the process that you use? Like, do you do a drawing first? Or do
Yeah,
you
short answer, yes. But that belongs very much to my practice. Often, just after coffee, I'll begin my drawing. And these are not specific drawings. Often I'll do just something rhythmical to limber up. And these are templated on a 9 by 11 sheet, and I'll do 6. And you just whiz through it, and you do something like simple geometry, but you get that line active, and you get that perception going. And this kind of opens up your seeing venture. But drawings, they're very integral to my practice.
do your paintings, do you like one at a time over a long period of time? Or
I really prefer to do, well, that's a loaded question. Both, really. I have, much to my own surprise, works that I'll haul out and find something new on them to do. This one, for example, the theme arrangement. Here I was, in some degree, taking my lead from neoplasticism, and I began this in 2007, and I only just this past month added the finishing touches to it. You're always looking again and seeing what's wrong with that. And what really was the clincher there was finding that kind of, what is it, gray-yellow. I needed something to relate that right-leaning zone into the center. So I just hit upon that, those two kind of light-colored things, and they just pulled it together neatly.
at the same time?
Otherwise, it was just too, overwrought and heavy. But yeah, and this occurs fairly frequently. I'll have something up that is there in composition, and I find that there's still further to go. But for the most part, I will, generally work maybe 2 weeks to 3 months on a piece. And this is not steadily. I like to keep maybe 3 works going consecutively. So, to give drawing time or something. And also, you really need to relax the senses. If you're overly intent, you can make a mess of things. So, thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much. That's good.
So that's really cleared my headache.
Oh. And we didn't dance. Yes, we did. We danced with our ideas.
Yeah, well.
Must have these things ready. Nothing settled yet, though.
Can I take a picture of you with your...
Sure.
Yeah, okay, great. I brought my camera and I thought I forgot all about taking any pictures. Brian's coming back shortly.
Okay.
For his, see if I can get that.
How do you want me?
This is fun. Do you want me to take a picture of you anywhere?
I want to be out there. How's this?
It's up to you. That's nice actually. You get your work in
The
there.
right or the left?
Sure, then you're centered between two pieces. I have a problem with my camera because I don't.
Excellent.
All right. Hi,